Ladies and gentlemen, we're fortunate to have with us today the local federal member for Monash, Mary Aldred MP. Mary has a strong background advocating for small and family businesses and, importantly for today's discussion, serves as co-chair of the Coalition's Illegal Tobacco Taskforce. Given Longwarry sits within the Monash electorate, Mary has seen firsthand the impact these issues can have on local businesses and communities. Mary has kindly agreed to provide a brief update and share some thoughts on the challenges facing retailers and the broader efforts to combat illicit trade and organised crime. Please join me in welcoming Mary Aldred MP.
Thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. I'm here because of Janet, and I'm here for Janet, because 6 months ago I knew nothing about this issue. And it was by going to see Janet and her staff at her business in a little town that I'm proud to represent as a federal member, I came to learn about this issue. Never let anyone tell you that one person in one country town can't change policy at a national level, because that is what Janet is doing, and that is what Janet will do with her story and her inspiration. In the 6 months that I've come to know Janet and the terrible events that she and her family and her staff and her town have been through, I've been compelled to stand up nationally on this issue. I've written op-eds, I've done speeches in the federal parliament, I have spoken week in and week out about illicit tobacco and the need for change in the way Australia regulates this issue across a number of different areas. And finally, when Angus Taylor took over the leadership a few months ago, he came to me and he said, "Mary, I've got a job I want you to do. I'm going to set up a Coalition Illegal Tobacco Taskforce, and I want you to chair that with Senator Richard Colbeck from Tasmania, and I want you to go out and work across a number of areas and put together a set of proposals for the Coalition, for the federal opposition to consider and put forward." And that's exactly what we've done. The facts speak for themselves, and you'll hear from Rowan and a number of panellists, Janet, about those points for consideration. But no matter which way you approach this issue, Australia is failing on multiple accounts. If you care about smoking rates in this country, well, the fact is they're not going down. For the first time in 30 years in Western Australia, they've had an uptick in their smoking rates. The Criminal Intelligence Wastewater Report, they do an annual report, 4% increase in metro and regional areas across Australia. So what we're doing now is not working. If you care about law and order and consider the first job of any government is to keep its people safe, to keep people in the community safe, we are failing at a state and national level. There's been over 300 fire bombings directly linked to the illicit tobacco trade. Some of those proceeds are going to fund terrorist activities like Kazim Hamed and the firebombing of a Melbourne synagogue. The proceeds of the illegal tobacco trade are going to bikies and organised crime, and that is presenting a clear and present danger to the safety and well-being of everyday Australians going about their business like Janet, going about their lives like the woman in Melbourne who was house sitting for her brother, and in a case of mistaken identity, that there was an arson attack and she died. Or for the teenagers rocking up to a shift at a petrol station or a convenience store being held at gunpoint for a pack of 20s. That's not an Australia I want to live in. It's not an Australia that we should accept as the status quo. The Illicit Tobacco and E-Cigarette Commissioner warned that 50 to 60% of the tobacco market in Australia is now illegal. Well, it's worse than that. The Australian Bureau of Statistics has just put out a report showing that 80% of the tobacco market in Australia is now illegal. So we've got 20% of that that's in a legal market. Over the last 8 years, there's been a 40% uptick in the consumption of nicotine products. We cannot go on like this. The excise revenue that the federal government collects that should go to funding roads, schools and hospitals that we're losing over $10 billion on, the Treasury have continued to downgrade those forecasts, and now they sit for the next 12 months at $4.1 billion. That goes nowhere near the $6.8 billion that's required to address smoking-induced illnesses that the health budget needs to be able to cover. Since 2012, the tobacco excise tax has gone up 282%, and both sides of politics need to wear accountability for those increases. It's happened under both shades of government over that time. Well, that has just opened up an illicit market, which we all here know. It hasn't stopped people from smoking. It's just given the green light to bikie gangs and terrorists and organised crime. The Australian Border Force, and Rowan is a much better expert than I am on this, but they do a great job. All of our state and federal law enforcement agencies and personnel do a great job. They are putting everything they can into this problem. But as the Australian Border Force submission said to a Senate inquiry that's ongoing at the moment, we can't enforce or detect our way out of this problem. In the 2024 to 25 period, the ABF had about 23,000 illicit tobacco detections. They were able to grab, I think, 2.6 billion cigarette sticks in one 12-month period. But that is a drop in the ocean. It is a game of whack-a-mole for them. You cannot just police our way out of this. And our law enforcement agencies have been pretty upfront as they are able to do with the constrictions and constraints that they've got on them. So over the last few months, I've been undertaking the work that the federal opposition leader has asked me to do. And that's serious homework. That's engaging with small businesses, family-run businesses, retailers, to understand their point of view, who want a legal market with manufacturing standards, with penalties applied across the board for people that step out of line, not just for legal businesses. We've consulted with health experts, people like Dr. Nick Coatsworth, Australia's former Deputy Chief Health Officer, who's also, in his own field of expertise, a respiratory specialist. I don't think you could find a medical professional better qualified to comment on this issue. He has now said the excise issue has to give. We've got to reduce the excise. Economists like Sol Eslake and Oxford Economics, who did a report which a number of you will be familiar with for Ritchie supermarkets, they have said that dropping the excise significantly has to be part of a multi-pronged approach. So last week I handed in my homework. I submitted the report to the federal opposition leader containing a number of recommendations, and I'm not going to go through them today, but my own personal view is that we need a Swiss Army knife approach to this. One policy solution alone won't solve this problem. We need to radically, and I mean radically, look at the tobacco excise tax level in this country. That needs to be matched with law enforcement, education, communication, and yes, I think personally, a legal framework for vapes and a serious national discussion about harm minimisation. Because prohibition, as we all should have learnt from the 1920s and alcohol examples, does not work. It has not worked. It will not work in this country. And that's why every day I've been working on this issue because of Janet, because of her story. Janet, I know you've been to hell and back, but I believe that the impetus now is on the side of what we have been putting forward on this debate, and you and your example and your courage and your inspiration will change policy at a national level in Australia, and I want to thank you for that. Thanks for your invitation today.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Mary, for those really powerful remarks. And of course, we echo everything that you say. We're looking forward to learning more about what the Coalition's plan is on tackling this crisis. And we're encouraged by your remarks today and the leadership that you have shown in what is a dire crisis for our industries.